Hi, good to see you. I have a number of clients who have the innovator visa, and this video is about what you should do after you get it. There's a number of important points to bear in mind. Let's get into it. So the first one is you need to just look ahead to the next 3 years. So to the point at which you're either going to extend your visa or apply for permanent residence. And for both of those things, you'd need to prove that you've made significant achievements judged against the business plan assessed in your previous endorsement. So this basically means that they will compare what you have done with what you said you would do in your business plan. And the important thing is that's the business plan as endorsed. So you've got to be a bit careful about amendments, because I think the safest approach at the moment, until we have more guidance on that, is that you're assessed against the original business plan, irrespective of amendments that you've made subsequently. Now, it may well be appropriate to amend your business plan in light of COVID or any other unforeseen events. I think that would be understood. But I think in terms of the assessment, then you're the safest to proceed on the basis that you're stuck with the business plan as originally endorsed, which should be fine, but there should be clear deliverables in that business plan. You would have seen my other videos, hopefully, in this series about what should be in the business plan, and that there should be some clear deliverables in that, so that that's verifiable when you get to the 3-year point. So you should be planning ahead on that basis. The next point is, in order to apply for permanent residence, you will need to have completed 2 of the 7 success criteria covered in the guidance. I'll link that below. So see pages 24 and 25. So 2 which people tend to focus on and which is worth highlighting are, firstly, that the business is engaged in significant research and development and has applied for intellectual property protection in the UK. Now, I have some comments about that. We'll get to that in just a second. And then the second one is that at least 50,000 has been invested into the business and actively spent furthering the business plan assessed in the applicant's previous endorsement. Now, I've heard about people doing things like engaging in trademarks for these purposes, and I would be very cautious about that if you are considering that. I don't think a trademark would generally qualify. So, and it's simply because a trademark does not generally involve a significant amount of R&D. So I would expect a patent or design to qualify in principle, subject to it having involved significant R&D. And again, we don't have any sort of case law on this yet. But there does need to be a link between the significant R&D and the asset which is protected. So if it's a unique design of a customer interface for your software, then the significant R&D, for example, the user testing, would need to have generated that design. And likewise, any patent for a new invention, such as a protectable algorithm that you've developed, would need to be the result of significant R&D in order to qualify. And I think the point which the area of risk here, I think, is that you do R&D and then you end up protecting something which isn't necessarily connected with what was the result of that R&D. So the R&D I would expect the R&D to produce something, for it to have an continuous progress, which begins with testing and ends in the creation of the asset. And therefore there is a link, causal connection and continuity between the R&D and what is eventually protected. And the next point is that in relation to the 50,000 spend, this can't be any old spending, but it has to be qualified spending, which is specifically been spent to further the business plan as originally endorsed. And it's important to identify what is to be invested and spent in advance, and then check before it's invested and spent that it can be defensively linked to the furthering of the business plan as originally endorsed. Then it's possible to plan ahead with your accountant to see what kind of evidence will be needed to prove that those funds have been invested and spent. So, for example, the trail of money that I would expect to see would be that the money goes from your account into the business, and then from the business into qualified spending, namely spending ideally which has been specified in the business plan, or which expressly furthers the business plan. But there needs to be a link. You don't want to be in a position where you've spent money anticipating that it would be part of the 50k qualifying spending, and it turns out that it's not for whatever technical reason. So I think it's important to plan that aspect ahead of time. Next point is that you would be asking the endorsing body in 3 years' time to provide the confirmation that you have met the success criteria and that you've made significant achievements judged against the original business plan. So it makes sense to keep in close contact with them from now on, and you don't want to be in a position where they take a technical point during, for example, year 3, by which time it might be difficult to make adjustments or to pivot. Sorry, I'll just show that point here. So I think this is really important, that you don't want to just pop up in 3 years' time and ask for the confirmation where there hasn't been adequate communication about it beforehand, and then there's scope for you to be misaligned on that. So there are the sort of mandatory meetings every 6 months. But they might not be sufficient for you to just keep in contact. So you might want to increase the regularity and frequency of those meetings, if that can be agreed. Next point is next and last point is the name of your business. So the name, but also the substance of your business is important. So in 3 years' time, the endorsing body and the Home Office, will ask, did you set up the business that you said you were going to set up? If the business is called something else entirely, then it might be difficult for this confirmation to be provided. But it is the substance of the business that really matters. If it's impossible to use the original name, then you can use a different name in my provisional view, but it may be sensible to incorporate the original working title so as not to cause confusion for the assessor when the time comes. If your original working title was expressly stated to only be a working title, then it might be easier to pivot. So you can see the force of this point. On the most basic level, there is a check to make sure that you set up the business that you said you would set up. And if you said your business was going to be business A, and then you've called it business B, then straight away there might be scope for confusion about that. It's fine. You may have suggested that there was a working title originally, but I would say that the easiest approach is for the business to be called what you said it would be called. If that's not possible, if there has been, for example, a trademark check and it's not possible to use that mark or the original title, then you might want to consider incorporating the original language. The business must be identifiable. I think it's a question of substance as well as form. So it's got to be clearly identifiable as the business that you said you would set up. So those are 6 really important points that I think you ought to take into account once you have the innovator visa. If you're considering applying, or you'd like some help with that if you've got the visa already, feel free to get in touch with me. My details are just below. Also, feel free to check out my courses on your various visa options, not just the innovator visa, but also other visas and also international options within Europe as well, and other similar visas internationally you might qualify for. Bear in mind this is for information purposes. You should take legal advice, and please note that the law does change, as it has done with the innovator visa. Thanks so much for attending the live stream, and look forward to speaking with you again soon. Bye for now.